Welcome back to Inside College Basketball Now with Jon Rothstein. Pleased to be joined by Wisconsin head coach Greg Gard, who had the win of the season thus far on Saturday at Michigan. Greg, welcome. How many text messages were on your phone when you went to the locker room after the game?
Over 100.
Who was the craziest person you heard from?
Oh, man, I don't know about the craziest, but there wasn't many that I didn't hear from. So, most all the former coaches and ADs I've worked with and for, and no, it was fun. It was obviously a terrific game against a really, really good team, and proud of our players. And the locker room obviously was very celebratory afterwards.
Now, Greg, all Wisconsin residents love the Green Bay Packers. Did you even care that they lost on Saturday night after such a big win in Michigan?
Yes, I did care. Yes, Saturday at Michigan made Saturday night a little more tolerable. But no, that was a rough Saturday night for our Packers.
Now, you've had a lot of great wins during your time at Wisconsin, but in terms of regular season victories, where does Saturday rank?
Well, I never like to compare years or teams. I mean, this team, it's taken a while for it to come together, and really with our consistency and I think from where this team was 45, 60 days ago to where we are now, that's what makes this really, made Saturday special. Obviously, you're playing a team that hasn't lost, a terrific team in Michigan, but the trajectory and what this group has had to go through and grow through to get to this point, to be able to compete at that level, is what I'm really proud of. And I think that's, we've had a lot of other great wins, as you mentioned, over the years, but there hasn't been a team that has had to, I think, accelerate and accentuate and climb in their season to improve quickly, and to be able to accomplish something like this than what this current group has done.
Why is Michigan so hard to go against?
Well, obviously exceptionally talented and big, deep, experienced, well coached. They can hurt you in a lot of ways. So, really good in transition offensively. We had to be able to match some of that and minimize some of the transition. We did a decent job of it, but they're obviously for real, and I think hopefully we've shown that we've improved enough where we're for real too. Like I said, 45 days ago we weren't, and we could see it. But I think we've taken some big steps here and are finally starting to consistently be at the level I feel this team can be at.
Greg, I've been covering you for a long time, all the way back to when you were an assistant. And I remember the first year you took over for Bo Ryan, you guys obviously got going for a couple of weeks, but then you had a really big win at Maryland in the middle of Big Ten play, and it catapulted you the rest of the season. You went to the Sweet 16 that year. And that's what Saturday felt like from my perspective. So when you get a victory like that, I'm curious, and you get with your team after the game, what was the message?
Well, it's duplicate and multiply. Like, we got to do it again, and we got to do it better. So, I think part of the ascension of any team is being able to believe it. And you can talk about it as a coach, you can show things, you can practice it, but you have to actually go accomplish something to really let that belief cement in. And I think that's hopefully what Saturday did. And we were trending in the right direction prior to. I thought the final score didn't indicate, but I thought we played Purdue. I thought we competed. And that's one thing with continuity or lack thereof, you find yourself being very inconsistent as a team. And that's what I think the biggest thing, the frustration for us, was that we had played well in spurts throughout the year, but we hadn't been consistent. I really probably lean a lot of that on just the new faces that we have in the program and them understanding how hard you have to compete all the time to play at a really, really high level. And we had shown some flashes of that, I think, more consistently against Purdue. And we obviously did against UCLA, and then obviously we carried that and then multiplied it as we went into Michigan.
But it's interesting how much things can change in 7 days, because I know Purdue's a great team, but you lose that game at home and then you come back and 7 days later you've beaten a good UCLA team in Madison, and then you have the win of the year on Saturday in Ann Arbor. What is it like to have that type of emotional roller coaster as a coach?
Well, you try not to make it be a roller coaster, right? I mean, if you look back at, we had played Milwaukee and Purdue coming around New Year's, and we were combined 8 for 48 from three in those two games. We go 8 for 16 against UCLA, and we go 15 for 33 against Michigan.
Yeah.
You can boil it down to you made some shots, that you try to minimize the roller coaster ride of it, right? If you're playing hard, you're doing things the right way. We talk a lot with our players about not having your emotional status tied to whether the ball goes in or not. It's much easier said than done. You're obviously way more energized and motivated and invigorated when the ball goes in. So to be able to still try to play the game the right way, play hard, do all those other little things, and then, have shots go in, that obviously it puts us to another level. So, it's probably not as simple as that, but if you look at stats, I mean, that was pretty telling.
Wisconsin for years was known as a program that wanted to play really, really slow, not turn it over, not foul. But there has been a major metamorphosis. I mean, you guys scored 91 on Saturday against Michigan. What has it been like, and how invigorating has it been for you as a coach to play such a high-octane style now?
Yeah, I think we've decided, 3-4 years ago that with where college basketball was going, you had to score. And we still don't want to turn it over. We still don't want to foul. But in order to win that type of game against, one of the premier teams in the country on both ends of the floor, quite frankly, you're going to have to score 91. So I think just where the game has gone with the pace, with the way the rule changes have come into play, we still talk a lot about the same things, but the transition component, shooting threes, that's something we felt if you want to compete at a high level, the offensive component is going to have to take a few steps up. And this has been, like I said, a 3-year, 4-year process of getting to this point. And we're now where we have a roster, we recruited to it, we trained to it. And obviously you have to adapt in today's world. There's been a lot of things off the court that you've had to adjust to, but one of the things we felt was vital for us to continue to play with the upper echelon or be in the upper echelon is we're going to have to shift some things offensively.
Well, and one of the players, obviously, that's been in the epicenter of that has been John Blackwell. And it was about a year ago at this time where John Tunje really started to emerge as somebody who could be an All-American at the guard position. To me, John Blackwell for the last 2 years has been one of the least appreciated guards in the sport. Do you see a similar trajectory for John Blackwell moving forward for the rest of this season as we saw from John Tunje a year ago?
I do. Blackwell's 2 years younger than what Tanjay was a year ago, so they're not the same age, haven't, been around the track quite as much. But, Blackwell has gone through, when he first came in here, we were more swing based, we were running that. So he's been right, as you mentioned, right in the epicenter of this transformation. So I think he's benefited from it. I think there's still things that he can become more consistent with. And like I said, that's our job as coaches. As much as everything around us is changing, your main focus is on trying to help your players get better and elevate their games. And John works exceptionally hard at it. And I get where the comparisons come from to John Tanjay, because we've had a lot of guys here going back to Johnny Davis, AJ Storr, John Tanjay. Now Blackwell is obviously the one that can step in, and we've obviously Nick Boyd coming in too from San Diego State has really invigorated our offense in a different way. But Blackwell's a really good player, and I think he's got a high ceiling yet in terms of where he can get to as he gets more and more efficient with his offensive game.
You mentioned Nick Boyd, and I know that coaches are now obviously super cautious about who they're going to bring in to their program from the transfer portal. But this guy played in the Final Four in 2023, obviously was a part of a San Diego State team last year that played in the NCAA tournament. How much do those requisites obviously check boxes when you're looking to evaluate who you're bringing in?
They're vital. I mean, we really want to, and I think we've emphasized this as a staff. When you're recruiting from the portal, you really want to hone in on who have they been coached by, have they been coached, and have they won? And obviously you're evaluating them as a player and as a person, all of those things. But the environment that they come from is essential. And obviously Nick's been around winning, both at FAU and at San Diego State, and he's extremely competitive. He's the most ferocious competitor we have on our team, and he wears his heart on his sleeve. So that is a big, along with the ability to dribble, pass, and shoot and guard people. What you've been around and knowing what winning looks like, smells like, tastes like, feels like, that's really, really important, because if you don't have that, you're not as willing maybe to grind through the hard times and really strain yourself, knowing what it really takes to be at the upper echelon of college basketball.
And piecing players in through the transfer portal is a major part of building teams now, but so is retaining the key guys. How much is the retention piece right now the number one priority when you finish your season and are planning for the next one?
Yeah, it's huge. If you look at the history of our program, it's always been get old, stay old, right? And that came through redshirting. Guys incubated on the bench for 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden they come out of nowhere and perform, and everyone wonders where they were. Well, they've been a part of our program for the last 24 months or so. That has changed. We still want to get old and stay old, but how you go about that has been tweaked a little bit just because of the transient nature of rosters. So being able to add experience through the roster or through the transfer portal has been important. Obviously, the retention is huge because we want to keep, I call them culture keepers, guys that have come through the ranks in the program, understand what this place is about, are really anchored to the foundation of this place. You have to have them. You have to mix in your freshmen as you go along. Can't take too many freshmen. And then you got to be very selective and intentional with who you're bringing in through the portal.
Greg, it's really, really interesting right now just across college sports. I'm curious from your perspective, just what is it like day to day to be a head coach in this climate?
I use the analogy that when I first got in this profession or was thinking about getting in it, 35 years ago, you should get your degree in education, right? You're going to be a teacher. You're going to be a coach, whether you coached in college or high school. Didn't matter. Really, most coaches were following the educational route. Then it kind of shifted to being, I would say, go be a psychologist, right? Get a degree in psychology. Now I think we're at the point where you should probably have a degree in law and a degree in wealth management and investments and how do you raise money. So that's really where you become more of a CEO than you are a coach in terms of operating the day-to-day, the microscope and telescope outlook on things. Where are we now? What's our roster look like in a year? We got to put it back together again. Do we have the resources to be able to do that? Can we elevate our resources? All those things that go into it that take you away from creating new out of bounds plays like you used to spend all your time on. Now you get focused on some other avenues of your profession.
Well, the basketball is still the basketball, and that's obviously the next important thing for you guys because you play next against Minnesota on the road, a team that has already beaten Iowa and Indiana at home. Give me your impressions of the Gophers.
Well, probably a polar opposite in terms of pace and what we're going to see compared to Michigan.
Yeah.
And I think Michigan averaged 13.4 seconds per possession. Minnesota's going to make you work, and you're going to get in deep shot clock situations. Nico's done a really good job there. They've had a lot of injuries, so he's had to piece things together. But with Cade Tyson, Bobby Durkin, Isaac Asuma, they've got the backcourt there. There's figuring out what he wants. Obviously, a lot of Princeton-based concepts, things that he brought from Colorado State. So it's going to test our defensive discipline, our awareness, our alertness. We're going to have to be very sound defensively because they'll grind you up enough and long enough, and then pick on the guys that I always say are undisciplined and unalert. So we're going to have to be very disciplined and highly alert.
And I know you've been down a front court player the last couple of games, Austin Rapp. Is there any update on his status for Tuesday?
Yeah, he practiced today, more full throttle. We'll see where this all leads him from today and into tomorrow night and what our medical people tell us.
Okay, well, that's good news for the Badgers' health. Another story that is not just really a factor in the Big Ten, but a factor nationally, has been the start by Nebraska. I think out of the gate, Greg, there was this feeling where this is a feel-good story, and now they're reiterating game after game that they're a really, really good team. As somebody that has played Nebraska already this season, just your 4-1-1 on the Huskers.
Well, you're bringing up a nightmare from December. They're for real. I mean, and you look at, obviously, you talk about continuity and experience, and that's why they jumped out of the gate so fast. I think, that group played together for the most part all of last year. Really, the only newcomer is Price Sanford. Lawrence was there before, transferred back in, so that's not really a new adjustment for him.
Right.
And then you add Rank Mass back into the fold, who was out all of last year, and they just have really good pieces. It's one of those where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
No doubt.
They really play well together. Fred's done a really good job of understanding how to compete in our league. And I think they're unique defensively in how they play you. And obviously they put there's typically 5 shooters on the floor. Felt like there was 20 shooters on the floor the night we played them. But no, they are. And I think they're for real. And the key is, I think you get back to continuity and consistency. When you can bring that many guys back, and obviously they had a deep run last year to the Crown Championship. So that just helps, that continues to help you. And again, the upper hand, when you can have consistency on your roster and continuity, that's what everybody's trying to get and trying to hold on to. And obviously Nebraska has that in spades this year.
Greg, doing this as long as I have right now, well into my second decade, I'm always fascinated how coaches hold on to tough losses more than they celebrate great wins. So for Greg Gard, give me one memorable win during your coaching career and give me a loss that always stings.
Good one. My very first year, Xavier, to go to the Sweet 16.
Awesome.
The loss the very next year, Florida, to go to the Elite Eight.
Chiozza
hits the runner. Yeah. Bad coaching.
That's the highs and the lows of the NCAA tournament. And beyond that, recruiting is something, obviously, as the lifeblood of any program. Give me one recruit that you really, really wanted and just missed out on.
Man, you move on quickly. Right? So my memory right now is I don't know if there's really, we always say we just want kids that want to be here. I don't get too emotionally wrapped up if I would have loved to have Con Knipple.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure we were second or 10th. It didn't matter. But no, I try to quickly, I do a much better job of moving on after a recruit says no than I do after a loss. You hang on to those a lot longer than you fathom over the losses way longer than you enjoy the wins, which isn't really healthy, and it's probably not right, but it's kind of how we're wired as coaches.
I just want to follow up too, because you said bad coaching on this Chiozza shot. If memory serves correct, this is off the top of my head. It was a tie game, and Nigel Hayes made 2 free throws. Did you want him to miss the free throw, or did you want to do?
No, I probably we play. Yeah, no, I think you make it, because then you don't even want to let a 2 or a foul put you in a position where you can lose. I think looking back at that, they didn't have a timeout, and I had one, and my decision was don't take one because they can draw something up. We didn't do a good job of really steering the ball up the court. We let him get a direct line, and he could cover more space in less time. Probably looking back, I would have really reiterated how we had to veer the ball, or B, take a timeout and double reiterate how we needed to play the ball to really make him go east-west and not let him come zipping straight up the floor like he did. So, when you're young and dumb, you learn from your mistakes.
This is the life of a coach. Well, final thing, Greg, you went on the road on Saturday and beat a team that had been dominating college basketball. So there's going to be no opponent you see from now throughout the end of the season that, your team should be intimidated by. But what are the biggest keys now moving forward for your team to play up to the level it did on Saturday against Michigan in every game moving forward?
Like I said before, duplicate and multiply. We understand what winning looks like at a really, really high level now. And like I said, we have been getting there, but we hadn't been there and stayed there consistently enough. And I think we've gotten tougher. We've gotten grittier. We compete harder than we did, 2 months ago. We don't let negative plays affect us, and we don't. We punch back when we get in tight games and when teams make a run on us. We don't get as fazed by it that maybe what we did earlier in the year, and that's part of a group maturing and growing together.
Well, Greg, it's going to be a lot of fun to cover. Appreciate a couple of minutes. Know how busy you are, and as always, look forward to staying connected along the way.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jon.
You got it. That's Wisconsin head coach Greg Gard. I'm Jon Rothstein, and this is Inside College Basketball Now.